Good to see you. Okay, we're almost home. It's interesting how we saved the Chief Investment Officer for the last chat, and the retention is very high in the room.
Did you tell them everyone gets $1 million spent? Everybody gets stuck in this.
Wait, you got to turn the mic on for that one. People need to hear this one.
Everyone gets $1 million, like an Oprah event. Just look at your chair.
And
It should be something.
That's good. There's 6 Teads people in the room right now, so that multiplies. For those who weren't here an hour ago, my name is Mike Dupree. I'm Chief Revenue Officer at Teads. Teads is a global omnichannel platform. We partner with the most premium publishers and OEMs across the open web and connected TV, and we provide full funnel solutions. We also have a great team, many of which are in the room, just a lot of really good people at the company who I have been on board for a few weeks and having a great time. And Matt, I don't know, for those who might not know you, you can formally introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Chief Investment Officer of GroupM in the US. Prior to that, I was running Zaxxas in North America.
Okay, so the title of this chat is Content and Context, Why Environments Matter. And it's 4:30 ish after a day full of content. So we're going to start with audience participation. We're going to get the activity going, the energy flowing in the room. So I'm going to ask a series of questions. What I'm going to share with you all, and Matt, you have to participate as well, is I'm going to give environments where we consume content. I'm just going to name a few places that we might consume content. If you deem yourself as personal choice, this is a premium environment, raise your hand. If not, you can keep your hand down. Okay. Let's say we're streaming billions on Showtime or Paramount Plus. Raise your hand if you think that's a premium. Most hands in the room. Let's see. We're reading a little bit about earnings season in the Wall Street Journal app. Premium? Not premium? Most hands in the room. All right. You're listening to your favorite podcast on Spotify. Okay, mostly. Maybe it depends on the podcast itself, what we're listening to. Scrolling through TikTok videos. Less hands. Interesting. Okay. You're watching a DIY tutorial on YouTube around something you care about. Not as premium. Interesting. Couple hands. Okay. You're reading a restaurant review in New York on grubstreet.com. For me, yes, very premium experience. It matters. We need to know the next place to make a dinner reservation. Watching Bachelor in Paradise on ABC. Matt, you don't have to raise your hand for that one. Not interesting. Okay, not a lot of hands. Are you guys getting tired? I only have one more. Okay. We are watching Major League Baseball on Fox, the playoffs. Premium. Okay. So, like a pretty interesting. I would say that the majority of folks raised their hand for the same areas and kept their hands down for the same areas. When we talk about premium content, it's something that a lot of people use in everyday vernacular in our industry. You have to evaluate that. You have to value that in your day-to-day work. There's a lot of content being created everywhere. It's widespread. What makes content premium? And how do audiences perceive the distinction between what is and what isn't, as we saw in the room?
Well, I mean, first of all, we saw different demographics raising their hand or not raising their hand. And the fact of the matter is, the value of the content is determined by the people that are engaged with it. There's certain shows, reality shows, that I don't think are premium because it doesn't speak to me, but my wife loves it. Conversely, there's shows, maybe sporting events and stuff that I watch on TV that she doesn't understand. So the fact is, if a consumer is spending time with content, there's value. Now, whether that's considered a premium environment or not, we could argue that all day, but the reality is that that's what we do all day, is we determine what that value is and how consumers, whether they engage in that environment or not, and whether that delivers on the client or brand message. So the premiumness of the content is also determined very often by the price you're willing to pay. A Super Bowl ad and the CPM of a Super Bowl ad is a lot higher than an ad on Bravo, Real Housewives of New York. So it's in the eye of the beholder, but there's also a way to sort of evaluate, the price we are willing to pay and making sure that it makes sense and aligns with what the brand is trying to achieve.
Yeah, and would you, just to double click into that more, you talked about demographic. If folks in this room who have children, maybe that have a phone, if we were to ask them if they think the TikTok scroll is a premium environment, their hands would probably shoot up, and there are probably a lot of brands who want to reach that audience potentially. We had Gen Z panel earlier in the day. So you talked about the eye of the beholder, but it's sort of audience matching to the brand objective as well.
Yeah, I mean, my two youngest kids watch Mr. Beast. They think the world of Mr. Beast. And I didn't get it for so long. And I sat down and watched it with them for a while, and I still didn't get it. But then I did a little research, and I met with some of the folks at YouTube. And what I understand about this guy, this is a media business. He's got 140 million folks that follow him on YouTube and all these different platforms. And he's actually doing some good, too, in the world. He also owns, I think it's 3 production facilities in North Carolina. So it is a business. He moves product, and younger, and I don't know if it's just younger males, but younger children engage with the content and love it. They spend a lot of time with it.
And they start calling me bruh instead of dad after they watch too much of that as well. It's a great point, and it's a huge business as a result. So, you could argue that is very premium, even though the look, feel, experience for us might not be that way. So it's a spectrum, and to me it seems like you're saying it depends on who we're trying to talk to.
But one thing I will say, and I've talked about this with clients for a number of years, follow the money. If you look at the traditional media companies, look at where they're investing, right? And what you'll find, and they even talk about it now publicly, Bob Iger mentioned this in his last analyst call, they are investing in their future business model, which is direct to consumer. It's Disney Plus, it's streaming. That's where data, technology, and content investments are going. And then take a look at, outside of sports and news, take a look at what's on traditional linear TV. I don't know that the Masked Singer, and there may be some people that are fans of the Masked Singer, but I don't know that the production quality or the investment in the Masked Singer is the equivalent of what maybe you get with a Yellowstone per episode. I know there's a difference there, and I think it does matter to brands at some point, but it matters based on what they're willing to pay to reach that audience in those environments.
So again, we are consumers in our own industry, and throughout the course of a week, we could have the exact journey that we just talked about. Like for me, I will in a given week watch the Premier League on Peacock. I will listen to music or podcasts on Spotify. I will read the article on Wall Street Journal. I will scroll through Instagram or X. I'm the same target audience across the board, right? But I could be in a very different mindsets throughout each of those experiences, and the advertising experience is also different across each of those. So when we talk about what is premium, it's in the eye of the beholder potentially. There's also the sort of content plus context. How do you kind of think about that? How do you when you're talking to your brands, when you're planning investment, and you know that you can reach that same person, but they might be in different headspace or receiving the ad as additive or intrusive, depending on what that experience is. How are you talking about that to brands?
Well, I mean, so when I was at Xaxis, we identifying the audience of people who were in market to buy an SUV, and they had the wherewithal and the interest, they'd shown interest in shopping for an SUV. And we could bid on that audience. We could bid on them, maybe if they're at ESPN.com or in CNN or one of the environments that were considered premium. But you could also find those folks on a blog somewhere reading about how to be a better parent. And the question was, well, what's the best place to reach them, and what's the value of reaching them? What's the incremental value of reaching them in an environment that we know, journalism, and there's investments in the content, and we always sort of measured that to figure out, was there brand lift? Do we get better performance in those environments? And the reality is, you get better performance in brands that invest in quality content. I know the panel before was talking about performance, and I think brand and performance. I didn't get a chance to sit through it, but at a lunch I had today, I was talking about So like, oh, performance, we need to drive performance. These things are not disconnected. Branded performance are one thing. There's a funnel, it's a singular object for a reason. You can't drive performance for most brands without brand, right? How do you drive performance if people don't know what your brand stands for, haven't heard of it before? Some people may be willing in social media to take a flyer to buy something, but the reality is most companies need both, and these things can't be separated.
There's always a waterfall effect, right? As you drive more awareness or consideration, if you take those cohorts and you look at their purchase intent, it will be higher, and that's what your data has shown you. And yes, you really can't have one without the other now. And I think again, the mindset and the experience seems to matter as well. The 5 to 6 second skippable on social versus a 15-second mid-roll on Paramount Plus are different experiences, even though you might be talking to the same person, but they also cost different.
Well, when my kids complain about ads, I ask them if they want to go to college. So the reality is, we talked earlier this morning about we at GroupM, and it's across the industry, we have to make advertising work better for consumers. And it's not just media agencies, it's the collective industry, because I don't know if I can sit through 4.5-minute pods in cable TV without losing my mind. That's why people look at their phone and scroll, by the way, and that's not good for brands. A 4.5-minute pod. We did research that shows for every 1 hour of traditional linear TV, you see 16 minutes of ads. Yet that hour, if you shift that hour, no longer do linear, but you take an hour of that time and you go into streaming, you only used to see 3 minutes of ads. The number is probably closer to 4 now, with Netflix taking ads. Here comes Amazon Prime. But I'm hoping that we don't get to a marketplace where they're doing 16 minutes in streaming an hour. Just not effective. I think you turn people off.
Well, I'll bring forward a question I was going to say for later, which is how do you think about frequency in all these environments, and how do you analyze that point of diminishing return, whether it is simply ad load. I'm a golf fan. When I watch PGA Tour golf or something on TV, it's less than, it's a bit more than 16 minutes out of every hour. It feels like 30 minutes out of every hour. Kind of turns me off as a consumer sometimes, but I also understand that it's business, and it's a great business. How do you control for, or how do you think about frequency and sort of that diminishing return point, particularly in digital, where you can get pounded over the head, as we just got through a Black Friday, Cyber Monday, where we're getting messaged everywhere, left, right, center, emails, and at a certain point, okay, I get that there's a deal, but is it, how do you know when enough is enough?
Well, it's interesting because there are companies that email me, right, or text me based on, and sometimes it's about giving, right? And so, you make a donation, it's a worthy cause, you participate in something, you feel good about it, right? And it's so easy to do, it's so seamless. Click, double click, Apple Pay, beautiful. I feel better about supporting something that's important. And then within 30 days, I wish I had never done it, because they won't stop emailing and texting me. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll double what I gave you if you'd stop texting and emailing me. That's charitable organizations and stuff, but brands have to understand that beating people over the head is not good for customers. It's not good for how customers interact with brands. It's not a great experience. I don't think we're doing enough to analyze that and think about too much frequency. Too much frequency happens everywhere, but I think in the early days of streaming, my wife and I, during COVID, the first few months, Friday Night Lights. Everybody watch Friday Night Lights?
Premium.
Total premium. I was not a viewer when it first came out in linear, but I watched it in streaming. I was blown away. I was connected to those kids and rooting for them. But if I saw that same, oh God, I don't want to say the ad. Is anybody here from Cadillac? T-Mobile? I would scream at the television. Those were the only 2 ads I saw for the 5 seasons, I think. And that's not a good experience. It's not it's not a good way to invest your money. So frequency, especially in this marketplace, when you start thinking about how dynamic it is, but just even converged video, you've got to manage frequency and messaging across all these different screens, because the consumer expects you to know who they are, by the way. You want to be treated, consumers' expectations, when I show up at Delta, when I'm at a Delta counter, I mean, I want them to treat me like I've been somebody that's been flying Delta and at the top level of Delta. I don't want to be treated differently. Consumers have that same expectation, whether you're texting them or emailing them, or when you walk into a retailer, if you're talking about a retail location. Expectations of consumers are up here. I think, unfortunately, some of the reality is a little bit lower.
Yeah. Bombas, I love their socks, but for the third time in the same day, I understand that there's a 25% discount. I'll get there if I'm going to get there. You needed to tell me maybe once or twice. It's something I think we all experience as consumers and as people who live in this industry as well. Okay, zooming back out, you talked about Bob Iger and sort of the news of the day as Disney. He sort of teases out potentially divesting some of the linear properties, and then more recently we sort of pulled it back. There was a flurry of interest in Freeform and ABC, and that still shows that there's a ton of value in original content and in what the properties are that make up that Disney portfolio, and perhaps people want to be able to access that content in a couple of different ways. There is no bigger place to make a splash than the Super Bowl. You touched on it earlier. And as a derivative of that, like you said, it's kind of news, live, and sports are driving a lot of that linear consumption. But we know that that's oftentimes in a temple, it's kind of a moment in time. And you're responsible for investment across the entire ecosystem. So how are you considering like an extension of a tentpole moment? So you talk about the Super Bowl, maybe not every brand can participate. There's really a whole ecosystem around the Super Bowl. So when you're planning for something like that, you have to look at multiple channels. How do you think about that?
I mean, first of all, you're right. The Super Bowl isn't for everybody. NFL football is not for everybody in terms of where marketers need to spend their budget. I mean, depending on the size of the budget and the cost. And it keeps going up. I mean, sports advertising in terms of inflation rate of change was like up significantly this year when the rest of the marketplace was flat to down. So, it's not for everyone, but there are opportunities, especially in digital and social, where you can engage and be part of that conversation without having to put the $7 or $7.5 million up for a 30-second commercial. And we talked to advertisers about what the business objectives are, how it's being measured, what are their plans for growth. And again, Super Bowl and NFL aren't for everyone, but there may be other events or opportunities to take advantage of cultural moments or other quote-unquote tentpoles that aren't as obvious as the Super Bowl. To retail, Black Friday, back to school, Halloween, all of these things are opportunities to engage with consumers and drive sales at your store with your product.
I think we've also seen brands create their own, right? There's now Prime Day is its own tentpole moment, its own holiday. And not only does Amazon activate around that, but there's a lot of other brands and retailers that do too. That is a moment that they created, and they have the clout to do it. You have Small Biz Saturday, which American Express has done an amazing job activating around as well. And then I spent over a decade at a social platform. Every day is a holiday. So if it's National Hamburger Day and you want to sling hamburgers, where to activate, and that's your moment, right? That's your moment that maybe is not, you don't have to share with others in sort of a Super Bowl type of environment.
I'm looking for Karen Chan. She sent out a daily investment newsletter update. I don't know where she is, but it's always like National Pickle Day.
Yeah. So what are we doing about it? Okay, so again, when we're talking about environments, when we're talking about content, the word of the year kind of has also been brand safety. Again, I spent 10 years at a social platform. Sometimes where the largest audiences are, those are often the environments that are the hardest to control for your brands. So how are you reconciling that when you're doing your investment planning, when you're talking to your clients?
So we have a responsible investment framework. There are 5 pillars, right? And this helps guide sort of what investment does for agencies and clients within GroupM, and the pillars are brand safety and suitability, which is an important point to make. Data ethics, just because you have access to data doesn't mean you should use it. The third is DEI, not just audiences, but also owners, right? Diverse owners. We did New Majority Ready, I think it's like 5 years old now, where we knew that the census in 2020 was going to show this changing shift in demographics, and we didn't know if our clients were ready. There's opportunity to sell into diverse audiences, but you've got to be smart about how you engage with them. You have to have, it has to be real. It can't be artificial. And engaging with diverse audiences, you have to engage with them in environments that they trust and respect. That's the third pillar. It's the center pillar for a reason. We also want to support journalism. And it's a really hard thing for some clients to do nowadays. It really, really is hard in such a divisive political culture, but also just the news of the day. It's one of the reasons I'm trying to pay as much attention to the news as I used to, but it's a difficult and challenging environment for a lot of brands who want to do the right thing, who understand the importance of journalism for democracy, a healthy, thriving democracy. But put yourself out there, and you've seen some of the things that have happened to brands when they do that. And the last one is supporting sustainable media practices. And this is an emerging pillar area that we're working with WPP and consultants and sharing some of the best practices we're learning, establishing benchmarks across the industry. So back to brand safety. What do we do? Brand safety and suitability.
Touch on the difference between.
Well, I mean, there are social platforms that have technology and individuals, people, they put bodies against trying to make it brand safe, and they've done a lot of good work. But environments where there's user-generated content and people are commenting on things, there's no 100% safe environment for brands in some of those environments. So some of those platforms, we do not recommend that clients go anywhere near comments, right? Stay away from those pages and stick to areas of the platform that are brand safe and probably driven by journalistic partners and people with great content. Suitability is also something we talk about it as well. Is it consistent with the brand's ethos? I think about how crazy it is that a really smart, experienced marketer at Bud Light got driven out of the role because of Kid fucking Rock. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. I'm sorry, I should have said, are there any Kid Rock fans in the audience? The fact of the matter is, I'm sorry, I'm not taking my political, cultural, brand sort of direction from Kid Rock and a bunch of people who love being angry. Now, you can argue whether or not it was the right thing for Bud Light, given the audiences that they normally engage with, their consumer. You can argue whether that was the right thing or wrong, but that was just way over the top for me. So that's what I think about around suitability.
Yeah, safety is sort of the industry standard, the industry floor, suitability, very tailored to the brand and where they want to be, what makes sense for them, and maybe a bit harder to plan for when you're working with so many. But obviously, you guys put a framework in place where you can make those recommendations. I'm going to save the shameless Teads plugs. We'll just talk afterwards because a lot of the things that you mentioned, like supporting journalism, sustainability, are things that we happen to be working on. We'll save that for later. I want to plant a seed for the audience, like we did with G. We'll want to save a couple of minutes for questions. I'm sure you guys will have some. So we have about 5-6 minutes left. So think about what you might want to ask Matt while we have him. I'm going to ask one more question. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, get away from media, marketing, environments for a second, and I did this in the last panel as well. You are a leader. You've been a leader for a long time. You oversee a big team. You have worked for great leaders. There are a lot of leaders in this room, or aspiring leaders in this room. I always think it's great to learn from folks where we can. So, can you share a great piece or the best piece of advice you've been given around leadership, or sort of a guiding principle in terms of how you work with your team or your organization?
and I talked about this earlier with a few people, but I think leading with empathy and like practicing like aggressive empathy in an industry as dynamic as this is, and like how collaborative things need to be for things to work well, especially within a media buying agency, have empathy for the client. Clients have really freaking hard jobs. They're expected to grow, macroeconomic issues or not. They have to grow, and they've got to protect their brand, and they've got to show up in the right places. Clients in marketing have very, very difficult jobs. But for us to do our job well, we have to work really well with the strategy teams within the agency, planning and client teams, analytics, measurement, research. I mean, the only way to be good is to be really, really collaborative and be a great communicator. And the way to do that is to practice radical and aggressive empathy. Put yourself in other people's shoes, understand they've got a difficult job. When you do that, you create this bond, right? This trust, where all of a sudden you're having real conversations and there's an alignment around a strategy or an initiative, and things move. And when you're able to do that and you're able to bring a team together, good things happen. That's where we do our best work. Conversely, where you don't have a sort of bond of trust and respect because you haven't maybe be as empathetic as you should be, other things happen. People start to doubt, your sincerity, where you're coming from, or you're doing this to make yourself look good, or your group look good. What about it? That kills collaboration, kills teamwork. So, what I've been very fortunate in my career is I've worked for great leaders. Oh, I've learned so much, but I've also worked for some lousy leaders. Sometimes learning from the lousy leaders is more important than what you've learned from the great leaders. And I am surrounded at GroupM, especially the investment team, by great leaders. I'm very lucky.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Let's turn it over to the room. If we have anybody who would like to ask a question, not to me, to Matt, we'd love to hear. Yes.
Going back to the frequency conversation, and you gave the examples of Cadillac and T-Mobile, who are really like well-known, established brands with a really strong brand identity. And it definitely is annoying when you see it's everywhere and it follows you. But what about like for much earlier stage companies, where frequency, could it be argued that frequency is developing the brand because they have no awareness, and just the repetition is actually doing more good? Or like the email leads, like Bombas might be annoying you, but when you're a really early stage company, if you're not emailing in that incremental sale, you might get that next round of investment, and then there won't be a brand in the future. So how do you balance for those earlier stage companies kind of that short-term need to just get that incremental dollar with then building long-term brand equity?
I mean, it's a knife edge, right? Because you've got to drive sales. You know what the metrics are. You know the more emails you send out, the more they get opened, the more people end up buying or clicking. I think it's trying to, getting that feedback back from, if you're emailing me, you probably already have a relationship. I've signed up for something or bought something. But asking me, how do you want me, and how often do you want me to engage with you? What normally happens is I get stuff out by unsubscribe. You ever try to unsubscribe to some of this stuff? They make it so difficult. And I think that's something like, that shows an amount of disrespect in a way. Like, I don't think, it ticks me off. And by the way, it becomes so difficult, I'm like, screw it, I'll just put it in the spam folder, and everything goes in the spam folder. But that's not a great experience. So I think when you're engaging with customers in all of those different formats, asking them, how do you want me to connect with you and communicate with you? Because we've transacted or we've done business, we'd love to do business with you, but it's got to work for you as well as it works for us. So feedback and data, understanding where your consumers are coming from, I think is important. And I was talking to a couple of media companies, and they're asking, well, how do we, they're in the audio space, how do we get money from cable TV into audio? So what do marketers think? What do clients? I know what I think, but like, put a council together. I recommend for any small brand, have a council of people who get additional benefits by participating maybe with you and telling you somehow they feel when they're being marketed to. Oh, that's what I would do.
I buried the lead. I mean, Bombas got me. I still spent $70 on the socks, and they got me. But I was not happy about
By
it.
the way, but Bombas, like,
But it's a great product.
I see that they make great quality stuff. I love their mission. Like, I mean, you buy a pair of socks goes to someone in a homeless shelter. Oh my God. We all want to feel good. I'm going to probably give something away, but my kids, our coat of arms are in the Sweeney household, no little assholes, pardon my language. What that means is when you walk through a door, if you don't stop and look behind you to see if someone's to hold it open, do you know when I do that here in 3 World Trade Center, I feel good. Because I see so many people, I see young people, guys bigger than me, that jump through the door, don't want to touch it. And there's a woman behind them carrying bags. That may be old school, but I don't mind old school. Let's have some consideration and kindness and respect and some awareness of what's going on around you. And so that's why I like Bombas. I don't know how
Oh, round of applause for that. I need your coat of arms posted in my house as well. Any other questions? Other questions? Yes.
Matt, how do you feel about like creative messaging as it relates to context and content, and also when it goes to frequency? Would you feel differently if Cadillac had like a sequential messaging strategy, like you were seeing a story happen throughout you? Like,
Yeah. By the way, I've got new biz dev people sort of texting me going, stop talking about Cadillac and T-Mobile. We'll never be able to talk to this. I'm talking about early days of COVID and streaming on a platform that didn't have a lot of advertising at the time. I don't think they do this anymore. I just want to sort of caveat that. So yeah, I mean, I mean, Saks is so incredible because we were doing work with a sports retailer, major sports retailer, and it was a Black Friday sale, and it was a lot of money. It was an exciting thing to work on. We had our data strategy team, our trading team, analytics team, and all of these folks working on it. And the thing that happened that worked the best is an ad about a sports retailer in Minnesota in November. A male in Minnesota got a different ad than a woman in Miami. And like just something that simple. Quick serve restaurants. I know if you're in a city, suburb, or in a rural community. So if the creative, even if it's animated, shows quick serve restaurant in a city setting versus suburban and rural, it has an impact. The lift goes up. People transact more, they click more. We talk so much about audience. And again, I do environment, context, I think is underappreciated. It's definitely, I think, coming back. But creative messaging is so important.
Good question. Any others? If not, we will wrap it up. I learned a lot today. Matt, thank you for sharing, taking us through your thoughts on environments. It's a complicated topic. It's a topic that has a wide range of opinions, as we saw in the beginning with the show of hands. And oftentimes in environments, what's defined as premium is in the eye of the beholder. There are challenges as you plan for it. I think it was very interesting to learn about the responsible investment framework and the different pillars across safety, suitability, sustainability, and DE&I. Mental notes on that, and certainly the leading with empathy will hit home, and that's when I'll remember a day, a week, a month from now. So thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank
Round
you.
of applause for Matt.